Spirit Halloween has officially been around for 40 years. Now that's a pretty big milestone. So, celebrating this milestone, I'll be looking at the entire history of Spirit Halloween, from the very beginning to present day. Join me on this amazing journey as we'll look back to how this company we know and love is on this present day. To start off with, we should look at a man by the name of Joe Marver, as he started all. You see, Joe Marver used to run a woman's clothing store, and just down the street he saw a Halloween store making a bunch of money. His clothing business, however, was failing horribly, and he needed a way to fix that. So he decided to make a new business in 1983, named as the title we know and love today, Spirit Costume and Party Company. This new company first opened its doors in California, and it was a smash hit. This new Halloween business was already doing quite well, so he decided to expand to the mall for the next Halloween season. This strategy worked, and in just a month, Joe racked in over $100,000 in that second location. Joe's idea of the business was to take over his space every fall season, then disappear. This was a very smart move, as the stores had to stay open year-round, but only at the time where they would be most profitable. Speaking of profit, something interesting to know is that Joe himself said he had no special love for Halloween and simply did it out of business reasons. And by around 1990, Joe decided that a better fit name for this company would simply be Spirit Halloween. But with this new name, he needed a new mascot. So 17-year-old daughter drew lots of different monsters such as vampires, mummies, and reapers in the same art style. And Joe's wife decided that the Reaper looked the best, so Jack the Reaper was born, the mascot of Spirit Halloween. Jack's name took inspiration from the serial killer Jack the Ripper. In 1994, our beloved company Gemmy produced their first item for Spirit, being the life-size animated witch, which is quite cool. And by 1999, Joe had nearly 60 stores, and Joe kept wanting to expand. However, it was in this very same year that he was approached with an offer by Spencer's Gifts. Spencer Gifts gave a decent amount of money, which for the life of me I can't find out how much that was, but it turned out to be good anyway, since now Joe had a good amount of money and Spencer's Gifts now acquired Spirit Halloween, which nowadays supplies over half of their income. Spirit Halloween was growing and growing, and in 2001, Magic Power Corp decided to start producing items for Spirit Halloween, as well as Pan Asian Creations also starting to produce for Spirit in 2002. Then, in 2003, Steven Silverstein became the CEO of Spirit Halloween, and he is still in that spot to this very day. Just a year later, in 2004, we got probably the most infamous company for breaking down, Techie Design. And in 2005, Spirit Halloween was releasing props left and right, and one of these props was Spasm. Thought I would mention this, as this is one of the few Spirit Halloween props that is actually a creepypasta. Honestly, this guy deserves his own video, but if you haven't recognized Spasm yet, the famous Russian sleep experiment image is literally just Spasm. I find it funny because people are terrified of this image and think that it's like a real person, when you can literally see a speaker. Guess it just shows that old Spirit props really were higher quality and fooled the entire internet to believe it was a real person. Also, in 2005, Morbid Enterprises released their first prop for Spirit Halloween. However, in 2006, something quite substantial had happened. The first sort of known theme we got was the haunted house entrance display, and I feel like this is one of the first actual themes that we have on picture. It's very cool to see themes, date back this far, and for all I know, there may be themes that are even before this, but it's very awesome just to compare older themes to the more recent ones. Such a massive difference, honestly. On top of all that, also in 2006, Spirit created Spirited Children, which is a very cool charity to give to children in need, and they still have it to this very day. Also, my personal favorite company, YJ, also started to produce Spirit Halloween props this year. SVI also stepped into Spirit Zone, and I feel like nowadays SVI is probably the most recognized retailer of Spirit Halloween. So this may have just been one of the biggest years for just Spirit's history. Moving on to 2007, the Fright Zone theme was released. Now, many people actually think this is the first IC, along with the castle entrance, which they are wrong on that. Super iconic Gemmy props like Jason Voorhees was released, and it was just an awesome time period. In my opinion, one of the most underrated manufacturers started to produce for Spirit, and that was Tail Yuck's Artware. They made awesome props like Silent and Deadly and all the detailed statics like all those zombie statics way back when. However, Taliux is actually a sister company of Forum Novelties who actually started producing for Spirit Halloween 2002. Anyways, it was definitely around this time Spirit Halloween started to pick up steam and became more of a local name. Now, something very integral to the Spirit Halloween experience nowadays is definitely the Flagship store. However, this has not always been the Flagship store. This has. You see, around 2008, videos surfaced of this building, and it used to be the Flagship location till about 2012. To all you modern Spirit Halloween fans, you may have been surprised to learn that there used to be 3 themes. But in 2008, there were a whopping 4 themes. American Gothic, which replicated the classic American Gothic. The Chop Shop, which was a laboratory-like theme. The Dungeon of Horrors, and once again, make a return from 2007, the Castle entrance. Moving along, 2009 would mark a point in one of the most missed Spirit Halloween traditions, sneak peeks. Now keep in mind, sneak peeks are still technically out today, but are very different. Spirit now does batch releases instead of weekly releases, and not many people like that. Sounds like another company, Anyways, you also have to remember that Spirit Halloween used to be much smaller than it is nowadays, so their old sneak peeks usually just consisted of a prop with a blank white sheet behind it, or any set piece they could possibly find. Very different from nowadays, huh? Also, if you thought 4 themes was a lot in 2008, in some stores there could be 5 themes. Now, I doubt all stores had this since a lot of the stores didn't feature some of the themes, and some of the things were like gallery store exclusives. But still very cool to think about. 2010, I feel like, entered an entire new era for Spirit. After all, it was a decade after the year 2000, and something just felt different. In my opinion, this is when Spirit definitely became more recognizable, and is a quote-unquote nostalgic era. In my opinion, one of the greatest themes of all time, Circus du Spirit, was featured in this year, along with Spirit Hollow Cemetery, Spirit Horriplex Theater, Zombie Baby Playground, and in some stores a cinema theme, a tree tunnel theme, and a Toy Story 3 theme. Now, excluding that bizarre Toy Story display that's listed on the wiki, there could have been a total of 6 displays. Now, as I said before, 2 or 3 of these displays could have been galleries displays, and they weren't featured in all stores. As I just said, the cinema theme was only in gallery stores. But either way, it's still awesome to think that there was once 6 themes. There were classic props such as Demonica and Uncle Charlie, who I'll get back to later. And it was also at this point, in my opinion, that Jemmy was at its prime. They released the 2010 Freddy, the 2010 Michael, and Pinhead. Oh, how they fell off. Anyways, I think next up I can easily say that 2011 is my favorite year of all time. Amazing props, amazing themes, and still reasonable prices. Truth be told, I don't really remember this year at all, but it looks amazing, honestly. Just look at how cool the zombie wasteland theme is. The flowing waterfalls, just the overall vibe of it, absolute perfection. Anyways, zombies like Twilight Twitcher, Flesh Eating Zombie, Rosemary Zombie Girl, the Harvester, Ghostface, and of course, the Jumping Spider, which may just be the most recognizable Spirit Halloween prop of all time, and is still sold to this very day, 12 years later, which is absolutely insane. The themes included Zombie Wasteland, obviously, House of Horrors, not to be confused with the 2012 version, the Vampire Mausoleum, Zombie Baby Scary Swings, and yes, there used to be Zombie Baby themes, and yes, Zombie Babies actually used to be good. Surprisingly, Party Time started to produce items for Spirit Halloween this year, which is weird because I never thought that they produced stuff for Spirit this early on. Also this year we got vampires and stuff, and honestly just a solid year for Spirit Halloween. It's also at this point I want to talk about the beautiful slime boxes, which were released around this time. This sounds kind of stupid, but this may just be the thing I miss from Spirit the most. The old boxes just popped a lot more, and I feel like it was more worth it to actually save the boxes. It just rang a certain nostalgic tone. Nowadays, they honestly just look kind of crappy, and I do hope that one day we get the lovely slime boxes back. Now remember when I mentioned that old Flagship store which actually ended up being abandoned by Spirit, then eventually used again? Spirit finally got the classic Flagship store we know and love today in 2012, and it actually used to be a circuit city if you didn't know. But Flagship was not at all what it was like last year in 2022. It was a way smaller event. But I would actually say around this time some haunters popped up and really started to promote Spirit Halloween stuff even more. Now if you don't know what a haunter is, essentially they're just YouTubers that make content on Halloween or Halloween items from like Spirit Halloween, Party City, or any other retailer. But in 2012, we got the first farm theme. If you didn't know, there was actually a farm theme before the 2018 farm, and in my opinion, it was much, much better. We got the tear mill, which had the super awesome working water wheel and actually had real water. And in my opinion, this is one of the best themes as well. Just the lighting and the whole ambiance really worked. Speaking of water, we actually got a prop that spat water, wolf spitter. Even though it broke half the time, it's still one of the coolest concepts even to this date. We also got Spirit Valley's farms, and for some reason the whorehouse reused and altered slightly from the previous year. This decision always confused me, as the whorehouse to me at least was definitely the weakest theme in the 2011 lineup, so not quite sure why they felt the need to bring it back. 2013 I think is what most hunters regard to be the best year, and I can definitely see why. I mean, where do we even begin? The clown train, which may just be the most popular theme of all time, the haunted mansion style theme, and of course the asylum. However, it was also this year Jemmy would take a halt in producing life sizes for Spirit for a while, and honestly it was great timing since Jemmy's quality went down horrifically. They even made this prototype clown that was meant to be featured in theme but never happened. This clown was actually named Demonic Circus Clown, at least that was its prototype name, and they decided to go with wackymole instead, which may have just been the best Spirit decision ever. We're also meant to get Chester the Jester in this theme, who's an online only in 2015. I'll explain more about him later. Which really makes me mad since he would have fit absolutely perfectly. It's actually pretty cool to see some of the concept art of the clown train and see Chester in there. Something interesting is that the eyes of the clown on the archway were meant to spin, and some stores had it spinning, but a lot of the stores actually had them off, so many people couldn't even see it for themselves. Looking at the Haunted Mansion theme, this was obviously inspired by the Haunted Mansion ride made by Disney. Something to know also is this theme featured Pumpkin Esther, who will have a very important role later on. Moving on to the Asylum, this is also a very cool and creepy theme. Something cool is that the background is actually a real abandoned asylum in New Jersey. 2013 was also the first year where Spirit picked up Atmos FX, which was used in themes around this time. Essentially all they were just little projections with like ghosts, zombies, and ghouls on it. 2014 in my opinion was the last quote-unquote nostalgic year for Spirit, at least in my eyes. This year also started a mini storyline in Spirit Halloween, which is kind of funny. Lil Nestor got introduced this year, who is Pumpkin Nestor's child. This was also the last theme that had Harvester and Rosemary Zombie Girl. The last year where they were sold in stores and on display, which really hit a sad mark for me, as these props are super nostalgic. This was also the last year those lovely slime boxes were sold, which I'm still super mad about. Also on Spirit Halloween's YouTube channel around this time, they had really cool concept art for props that were released later, like as you can see this is Barnyard Butchers, and I really wish they still did this, as it was a pretty cool idea just to see the animatronic develop from idea to reality. Anyway, as for the themes, the Ruins was the first main theme, and it was actually designed to have a fallen tower to create an archway, but unfortunately this cool idea got scrapped because it was way too unsafe. The Attic was the middle theme and was largely inspired by the 2013 Haunted Mansion theme. Something interesting though is that this was the only year to have custom box designs just dedicated to a single theme. That's right, these may just be the rare Spirit boxes, as only props in these themes actually got them. And unfortunately, this was the last middle theme we got from Spirit Halloween. Now we did technically get 3 themes back again, but I'll explain that more later. Poor Chester the Jester also would have been released on the theme, but it got pushed back again. There's also an unreleased 2014 prop made by Techie, and her head would have spun around. Her name was Tina, and not quite sure why she wasn't released. There's even a super awesome 6.5 foot grandfather clock made by YJ, and that was also scrapped for the attic theme. And even after all that, there's another prop that was scrapped for this theme named Undead Granny. However, she was actually released online a bit later. I think the reason why all these props were turned down is even today, the theme honestly just looked super cramped. So I can't imagine how tight it would be with all these extra animatronics. Finally, we have the Last Chance Gas theme, which is one of the most underrated themes of all time in my opinion. Moonshine Barrel was also scrapped for this theme, and there was a zombie baby named Ratatouille, but this theme has Barnyard Butcher, so that makes it already rise up in my books. Fun fact about Barnyard Butcher, he actually reuses a mold for the face from the 2012 animatronic zombie clown. Now we enter 2015. I think it's at this point Spear is definitely becoming more retail and definitely turning down the blood and gore on props. I didn't really mention this, but not a lot of people realize just how terrifying Old Spirit Halloween was. Whether you like Old Spirit or New Spirit better, you can't deny that Old Spirit was simply more terrifying and bloodier. But since they're becoming more and more popular, they obviously can have blood and guts thrown around all over the store. But this was just the start of the censorship. We also lost the amazing slime boxes to the boxes with a seemingly more sleek design. However, at least the text was still green and it kind of had the same vibe. We also got maybe the most infamous Spirit Halloween prop this year, Wheelchair Granny, which is, let me just play the video.
Who are you? What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here. You need to leave this instant.
For some reason, this piece of garbage returned again for the 2016 season. I'm assuming as leftovers, as I genuinely know no one that would buy this unironically. Also, we got another super infamous company, known for its horrible quality, join the Spirit Halloween production team, and that would be Crazy Create. At this time, Forum Novelties, who made props like Walking Zombie Girl, which is also one of the worst Spirit Halloween animatronics of all time. Left Spirit Halloween, which honestly may have been for the better. But back in the day, they actually made detailed statics like Darkside Jester, so what a shame. One theme we got this year was the Voodoo Swamp, which many people still think it's called Spirit Swamp Tours, and that's incorrect. But it actually had fog coming out of the chimney, so it was a very epic theme. And the back theme was Spirit Station Z, which may just be one of the most forgettable themes, honestly. It's not bad, but I just always forget that it exists. It actually was going to feature 3 2016 props, Morning Gory, Act Zombie, and Boogeyman, but they were moved up to the 2016 season. This theme, like other previous themes, had Atmos FX projections, and would actually be one of the last themes to feature it. However, just looking at all the pre-production images of this theme really makes me appreciate just the sheer thought and effort that goes into the Spirit Halloween ISCs, which if you didn't know stands for In-Store Experiences. Even if this may not be my favorite theme, I can't help but proclaim just how well each and every one is planned out. Also in the 2015 season, we got Smoldering Zombie, who literally got smaller and smaller as each year went on. Don't know if Spirit did this on purpose, but honestly I find it quite hilarious, even if at the time people were annoyed at how overused his audio was. Hey, speaking of overused and annoying audio, Twitching Banshee also came out this year, and I don't think I really need to say anything else, do I? Now in 2016, we got the tallest Spirit Halloween IC yet, the Clock Tower, coming in at 17 feet. However, most stores didn't even have that high of a ceiling, so most of the time it just looked kind of pathetic. Some props we got in this theme were little Skelly Bones, who you should take note of now, and Cerberus. Another super popular prop like the Jumping Spider is the Scene Scarecrow, which spawned a whole new line of props for later years, and is honestly one of the first props non-hunters think of when thinking of Spirit Halloween. It's sort of like the modern jumping spider. Honestly, if this theme was at its maximum height, it was pretty cool, but most of the time it just looked kind of sad and disappointing. There are just a lot of forgettable props in this theme, like the smoldering ground breaker, the arm behind the tombstone, and the howling werewolf. Not horrible props, but I just think it was just kind of summed up that year on how it really wasn't that bad, but just not very memorable. However, I do think the back theme isn't horrible, as it has some pretty cool props like Floating Ghost Girl and Boogeyman. An interesting thing about Floating Ghost Girl is she actually had a base in stores and not a wall mount compared to the rest of the models. This is actually one of the first spirit themes to have unique activators, and what I mean by that is there are little hotel bells you could ring to activate props, which I think is just a small little cool detail. Something that does make me mad though is that the towering ghost chain guy was supposed to be in the scene but was scrapped into online only. He's definitely a super cool underrated prop. Something interesting this year though is that Jemmy actually returned and made a prop called Bony Tony, who I mean look, he's not bad, but you're telling me Jemmy went from this to this? Like, oh yeah. This is not even the worst of Jemmy. It gets much worse later on. Also around this time, Spirit also would be stirred up in some controversy revolving some of their costumes. Some of their costumes are just blatant racial stereotypes. For example, some Native American costumes. Now, I don't really like to delve into controversies like these. If you want, there's probably an article about it somewhere you can read on your own time. But needless to say, there were lots of protests and attempted boycotts for Spirit Halloween. It was also at this point Morbid Enterprises stopped producing for Spirit Halloween. And like Jemmy, they fell off so hard. Unfortunately, just a couple of years later, they would file for bankruptcy. Rest in peace, Morbid Enterprises. Moving on to 2017, Spirit has definitely picked up popularity now. Hunters everywhere are making videos, and Spirit stores are increasing rapidly. Even leaks were gaining more popularity now, and this is one of the most notorious seasons for leaks, as essentially all of the lineup was leaked super early. Obviously, leaking is still a problem, but this year I feel like it really started. Unfortunately, since Forum Novelties left a while back, and Taliux Artware was a sister company of theirs, Taliux bit the dust and stopped producing for Spirit in 2017. Jemmy would make a comeback with Jack Skellington, which is one of the best props they made in a while, but kind of fell flat with Sally a year later. With this Jack Skellington prop, we sort of got a taste of a third theme with a side display, but it just didn't feel the same. The front theme of this year was Spirit Hollow, a forest-like theme with a bridge in the middle. This is actually the first time Spirit experimented with the walkthrough element, and we would see this much later. Another super cool thing about this year is that Limb Ripper would make a return from 2012. This is the first unofficial Flashback Friday, which if you don't know what they are, I'll explain them later, but essentially an old prop from a couple years ago came back to the current season. This theme was actually conceptualized for 2016, but eventually it was used for the 2017 season. Props in this theme include Limb Ripper, returning from 2012 obviously, Forest Demon, and a prop that started an awful line and continuation of the same style, the Ghost Swing. I already said my thoughts about this in the previous video, but needless to say, I hate this thing. It's lazy and not innovative at all. However, also we got Menacing Molly, who is known for getting absolute insane views on YouTube and other social media. One of the most viewed Haunter-related videos on YouTube that was actually made by a Haunter is HCJ's Halloween Menacing Molly demo with over 61 million views. Basically, slap Menacing Molly onto a thumbnail, and that's free views. Another super influential prop release, Creeping Towering Clown. This one prop single-handedly divided the Spirit Halloween community forever, and is a part of the reason why Spirit Halloween themes don't work anymore. What I mean by that is we haven't really seen an amazing clown prop from any Halloween company at this time since 2013 in the Clown Train. This prop was revolutionary at the time, and it starred all the 7-footers as well, and also made clowns popular again. So that's why half of Spirit's lineup is clowns now. It's because of this sneaky little prop. And also part of the reason why props don't fit into theme nowadays is because half the props are clowns, since they're the most marketable and easy way to get money. More on that a bit later though. This year almost felt like a new chapter, and I think Spirit really identified what they wanted to do. As really the period between 2014 and 2017 are probably the least memorable years in my opinion. However, I haven't even talked about the back theme, Area 31, which is one of the craziest stories yet. First of all, this theme is very reminiscent of Zombie Wasteland, which I certainly approve of, but there's a deeper reason for that. More interestingly, this theme was supposed to go along with Spirit Hollow, and it was supposed to be some sort of cabin that was in a forest. But one of the people in Spirit's team really wanted alien props, but that would not fit at all with the theme, so they had to change it. But nowadays they would just shove aliens in there and clowns and whatever. Anyways, apparently this was the fastest designed theme, taking a quick 3 days since they're in such a rush now, which is probably why it's so reminiscent of Zombie Wasteland, since they had to reuse elements. I mean, it's all there. There's little blocks on the side of the tunnel, there's a tunnel, and there's props lined up, side by side on the back. Obviously, the name is meant to mimic Area 51, and there's aliens and stuff. But something not a lot of people know is that there's actually a facade of UFOs on the top of the roof. Only in some stores with a high roof. Roofs, or Spirit Halloween roofs with low ceilings, couldn't really have this cool stuff. Finally, in 2017, Yu joined the team in producing Spirit Halloween props. 2018 would mark the final year Spirit and Atmos FX would work together, and also the last year Gemmy would make an animatronic for Spirit being displayed in stores, that being the Sally animatronic. The Sally and Jack animatronic also would be in a mini side display like 2017, but we sort of got a flashback theme in the form of Spirit Acre Farms, being very similar to the 2012 farm theme. Something kind of interesting is some stores couldn't have corn stalks due to fire regulations. We also got Michael Myers this year, which in my opinion is probably the worst Michael we got from Spirit. It's kind of disappointing, honestly. Still not the worst Michael in retail though that Gemmy made. Speaking of Gemmy, even though Gemmy doesn't make props for Spirit anymore, they still do help Spirit with some lights and lighting in their themes, which is pretty cool. Something pretty cool with these modern ISCs is we can see the pre-production plans for them. Once again, this really makes me appreciate Spirit for how much planning they do to make themes. Unfortunately, this is the last year where props actually match their themes, which is something I miss super greatly. The back theme featured the first sort of walk-in and mini haunted house, if you would call that. Had this cool laser effect with screaming audio. However, speaking of audio, I wish I was making this up, but I am not. Spirit Halloween used a slowed down version of the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song. I'm not even making that up. Here's like an unedited video of it. Why Spirit did this, I don't know. Maybe it's like an inside joke or something, but very interesting to say the least. Looking at pre-production of this theme, you can see how the design is way different compared to how it turned out, in the form of, different props and just a different style. There's like a deadly creeper looking prop, a ghost boy, and like a zombie farmer. I think deadly creeper prop may have been downsized to a giant roaming spider, or it was just a static spider, but still very interesting to look at. Now on to 2019, when all the charm in the box was just gone. I mean, just look at this. The boxes nowadays take a model after the 2019 one, and it just feels more corporate and soulless. Now buckle up for this, as I have a lot to say about the 2019 front theme, the SS Riptide. So Mike Kroll, who basically does all the work for the themes, which massive shout out to him, but he said the reason why the SS Riptide is filled with just random stuff that clearly does not fit is that Jack the Reaper pilots a ship and he sails around everywhere and picks up creatures as he goes. Which isn't a bad excuse, but then you have to wonder why the lair themes like the lab and the island have random props scattered about. Now, I guess the island, you could say, was the stop for the monsters, which is why there's so many returning props in the display. But then the trend continued of putting props that don't fit at all into the themes, like the factory and the lab. It just kind of sucks, and it's just a bad product of misunderstanding and bad timing, honestly. I really hope that one day this trend will stop and we get just the classic themes where props actually fit, but I don't think so. But back to the theme, it's honestly a very detailed theme, and I love looking back at all these pre-production images as well. Even if it's not my favorite, I can appreciate what Mike Kroll was trying to pull off, even if it didn't work necessarily. The theme to me just feels messy. Themes just seem to be scattered about, and I still think we should have got some sort of pirate prop. I think it definitely could have been pulled off a bit better, but I don't know. It doesn't look very pleasing to the eye, I guess I could say. However, with this theme, we got the infamous ship.mp4, which was a mistake title Spirit made for their showcase video of the props in this theme, and it's kind of just become a meme in the Haunter community ever since. However, that's just the tip of the iceberg for this theme, as there are so many canceled props that have just such a crazy story later on. There used to be a Jemmy Freddy Krueger in this theme, which is kind of insane to think about. But I'm kind of glad Spirit didn't let Jemmy invade the store with their crappy quality stuff, since I'm pretty sure this is the same Freddy that was sold a while back. There's a scrapped rising pumpkin creature for this theme, and also this scrapped zombie crawler. But quite possibly the most interesting scrap prop is Toothy the Clown. Yes, that's right, Toothy the Clown, a prop for the 2022 season, was going to be released for the 2019 season. Now, I recommend checking out a video that GM Hans made on it, as honestly, there's so much content to cover him. But long story short, back in December of 2018, which is the month where they receive lots of prototypes for their next season and getting ideas for the props they make, photos surfaced of this swinging clown. Then during the 2019 season, Toothy was canceled because, hilariously, Spirit said there are too many clowns. I guess even Spirit has their limits. We could even see Toothy in the concept art too. At this point, many hunters embrace the Toothy character and desperately want him back. Then in 2022, Toothy's link was added to the Spirit Halloween website, essentially confirming him that he was releasing. In near November, he was finally released. Once again, go ahead and check out GM Haun's video on it, or another Haunter. He goes over the story in much further detail, and it'll be the link in the description. Now back to 2019, the back theme was super monumental for the time. The walkthrough includes screens, which we had never seen at Spirit before. There are also so many references to past themes, such as Cirque du Spirit, the Asylum, Voodoo Swamp, and the Clock Tower. There are even more references, so this is just the surface of them. They even pulled a trick out of Disney's book and even added a scent-producing device, pumping out fishy smell similar to Disney's smellitizers. I never thought I'd be comparing Disney parks and Spirit Halloween this closely, but here we are. Once again, this theme had props that did not fit at all, and this was once again the first year that embraced that. However, this theme went through a lot of planning, so I can appreciate that. Some props this year were Demonic Dolly and Jack Straw, which had a revolutionary mechanism. Pennywise, one of the best modern licensed props. We also got Crouchy, who's probably one of the most famous clowns and kind of made a return in 2022. I'll talk about that a bit later. And Waving Wally, perhaps the most overhated prop. Something interesting is he had a scrapped prototype phrase that not a lot of people actually know about. Let me play that for you.
Come with me to the big time. We will have such a fun time. I love to play games. I know the back way into the tent. I will show you the way. Come with me.
Now take that with what you want, but Spirit scrapped that phrase because it was a bit suggestive, I could say. Unfortunately, New Ray Sun would stop working with Spirit this year. They were always a sister company, Seasonal Visions, and made props like Barnyard Butcher. But fortunately, they were rebranded as Fu Yu Xing Company. which I'm not even going to try to properly pronounce that. But they actually returned to Spirit, and they made props like two scoops and Krampus. It was at this point where COVID struck, and many were wondering what Spirit would do for the COVID season. Many people were actually trolled by Hauntformer, as he said that Spirit would be closed as an April Fool's joke, and thankfully that was not the case. However, plans were massively set back. Just looking at this old concept art honestly just makes me sad on what we could have had for the theme. I eventually just want to make a video just discussing the missed potential of 2020, because this honestly could have been one of, if not the best years. Obviously, the walkthrough was scrapped because of COVID, and overall, the theme and budget were just scaled back super heavily. This is what we could have got, and this is what we ended up getting. Quite a shame, really. What else is a shame is that just recently, Halloween Hunter, also known as Chad, got this amazing scrap 2020 prop called Dr. Needles that would have been in the 2020 theme, the front theme, next to Miss Mercy. Such a shame that this was canceled, as honestly this is, I'm not even gonna lie, one of the coolest Spirit props. Let's just hope it's a toothy situation and he makes a comeback eventually. We also got the infamous Johnny Punk, who actually had, in my opinion, a bit better prototype phrase, but not by much.
Hey, who was that I saw you with earlier? Was it your sister, your girlfriend, your mom? It's hard for me to tell because you're all the same kind of ugly.
Still to this day, Johnny Punk is probably considered to be the worst Spirit prop of all time to many haunters. And speaking of prototypes, in the back theme, Miserable Maria actually may have originally had light up eyes according to this leaked picture, or it could have just been a bad camera angle, but who knows. We also got Harvester of Souls, who really used the fog machine technology to its fullest potential, and Techie truly made a comeback with this guy. But looking at all these scrapped ideas really do make me sad, because this year could have been so much better. Also, something kind of funny about the front theme, like 2018, they couldn't actually have straw roofs in some of the stores because, once again, fire regulations and stuff. But rewinding it a bit back, though, I do think that 2020 may have just had the best sneak peek season. First of all, how can we forget Flashback Fridays? Honestly, this topic once again deserves its own video, as it's one of the greatest Spirit traditions that I hope just never stops anytime soon. It technically started with Limb Reaper back in 2017, but the first official Flashback Friday was Uncle Charlie, all the way back from 2010. You see, in around 2017, when people realized Spirit could bring back past props, if they sell the molds, or they're just pretty easy to make, people immediately asked for Uncle Charlie. Honestly, I think it kind of started as a meme and just transformed into a huge movement, as all throughout the 2018 through 2019 season, hashtag Bring Back Uncle Charlie was super popular, and honestly, I'm not quite sure why. Sure, he's a clown and he's pretty cool, but I always felt that there was so much cooler props I could return. So he returned, and the community was still mad because they got rid of his old voice and face mold. Classic horror community. Anyways, other props were also brought back this year, like Flashing Zombie and the Gatekeeper. Props that not a lot of people really asked for, but were pretty cool. With this, Flashback Friday officially started as a tradition, as every Friday Spirit would re-release a previous prop. Other teasers like the Watch Out teaser made people believe that Wackymole would come back for the 2020 season, and it turned out just to be Peekaboo Clown. Speaking of Peekaboo Clown, there's actually new technology, which was the LCD screen eyes. Spirit really didn't use it that much, as it was just mainly on Peekaboo Clown, but it's still a cool technology that SVI kind of thought of, and they still use it on some of their props today on other stores. But probably the most hyped teaser for sure was the Something is Terrifying Coming teaser, which released on July 7th of 2020. This, in my opinion, is how Spirit should do teasers, and I'll rant a bit further about how they do them nowadays. But I think this was the perfect balance of revealing things, but also providing speculation, which Spirit either does way too much of revealing things, or just way too much speculation. This was just right, and honestly, it sucked that this was the last normal sneak peek season. Another interesting thing, this year, Morris costumes entered the stores as fillers, which I find quite fascinating. Something I also want to mention is the Spirit Halloween songs that being made by Nick Lusto. It started with the Spirit Halloween theme song, then Spirit actually uploaded one on their channel, actually the last two. Spirit uploaded Unleash Your Spirit, and finally they uploaded Spirit Halloween Planet. These were just fun little songs, and I always found them quite enjoyable. It's now 2021, and Spirit is bigger than it ever was, appearing on newspaper, news channels, and all that good stuff. Even just looking at the Flagship attendance really proved that people are just looking forward to what Spirit had in store. People are now waiting outside hours before the store opened, which was never seen before. Now, possibly one of the most hype/controversial things Spirit has ever done was the Graveyard Shift, which was advertised as a movie. And no, this is not the Spirit Halloween movie that actually exists, that comes into play a bit later. Anyways, on around June 9th of that year, a website went public named The Graveyard Shift, and we could see props like Henry Hustle and Mr. Howl on there. Obviously, we didn't know what they were or what they did, but there's a countdown to the day of July 15th. Now, people were thinking that this was a date that the themes would be revealed or possibly video showcasing Flagship. Honestly, in the early days, you were called kind of crazy if you thought this was a countdown to sneak peeks, as Flagship was just around 2 weeks later after that date, except it was sneak peeks. Spirit Halloween released some promotional things for the event, such as like pins and a teaser, which later revealed Wackymole was coming back, and like another one showcasing Mr. Dark, but that was about it. Literally no sneak peeks, and we didn't even get the whole lineup on that date, just around half of it. It wasn't even a movie, it was just like a tiny teaser, like what we got 1 year ago, except early July, and sneak peeks on top of that. Also, above all else, it didn't even release at the right time. It like glitched out and released an hour early than it should have. That or Spirit just accidentally released it or something. I still don't know what happened on that day. The day Flagship arrived, though, we didn't even know what half of the props did. Obviously, this was super controversial and a mixed thing. On one hand, at least we got, batch releases of props. But on the other hand, weekly sneak peeks were just better. Seeing how essentially the same thing happened in 2022, I'm doubtful that, proper sneak peeks will return, but we will see. Anyways, back to the season. We got more returning props in the form of Wackymole, who I actually quite like for staying true to its original form. We also got Bloody Bag of Jokes from the Clown Train, Lil Nestor, and Grave Grabbing Corpse from 2016 returning? I don't even know. Besides the Grave Grabbing Corpse, honestly a pretty good lineup of returning props. Anyways, looking at the front theme already, I appreciate this theme for being spooky. Honestly, the island was cheesy and not scary at all. The theme was actually inspired by Santa's workshop, and the pumpkin conveyor belt was one of the hardest concepts to make, but I think it turned out fantastic. There's even a countdown to Halloween and a mini walkthrough with fake pumpkin gut tiles on the ground, chains, and flashing lights. We actually got a clone of the Hauntress, who released in 2020, and honestly had a pretty awesome jump scare mech, which was Ghostface, but he was pretty disappointing as he was just too short and it just looked cheap. Henry Hustle, Buzzsaw, and Grim are all pretty amazing props in this theme. Speaking of Grim, we actually got introduced to servo technology, which we had never seen at Spirit before, and I do hope that more props get servos in the future. We also got more Spirit Halloween lore, that Henry Hustle is the father of another prop featured that year, Harriet Hustle, and there's an online only in 2019 named Ron Ringmaster, and apparently in the story, Harriet's mom cheated on Henry with him. The Spirit lore is just insane, man. Once again, Spirit is teasing us about not having 3 themes, and there's like a mini third theme with a Shorty and Sam in it. I do appreciate those, it really added some more, kinetic energy throughout the store, and it really made me miss having 3 themes. However, the back theme is one of the most interesting parts to me. First of all, they made concepts of 2020 that just made me sad again. They're like on the little clipboard, kind of in the corner. But they also had pictures like Crypt Keeper, a prop from the 1990s, Jemmy produced for Spirit, and Pumpkin Nester. I will touch on these a bit more later as I think they're quite prevalent now. But anyways, this theme also featured screens like the 2019 aquarium, and also had Wackymole, and of course, how can we forget Mr. Dark, one of the coolest and most shocking props of all time. I don't think anyone expected it to have that motion. But honestly, just something I want to talk about. It's definitely at this point, I think many people realize that Spirit has toned down their props so much. Definitely just looking at a prop like Buzzsaw, like, if this prop was released like just 10 years prior, it would have had blood and guts all over it. Even like Evelyn Leach, she's holding a decapitated head, but there's not really any blood prevalent. I'm not saying like every prop needs like blood and gore just like covered all over in it, because honestly, sometimes it can just be a bit much and unnecessary at times. But if there's a prop like, Buzzsaw or Evelyn Leach where they're literally holding a decapitated head, or they're like a butcher, they need some blood on it to get the point across and to actually scare people. But I don't know, it's just kind of sad, but I understand what Spirit's doing, There's definitely a lot more younger hunters out there, and overall, Spirit's just become way more popular now, so I understand that Spirit has to do that, but it always just makes me a bit sad. But also on the sad side, Magic Power Corp went out of business this year. They're the company that made props like Wolf Spitter and Twilight Twitcher, but thankfully some other companies still use their parts today. It was also around this time there were infamous leakers such as Stucky and Bud made leaks all the more controversial by just, making leaks way more mainstream and just slapping their watermark on leaks that weren't even theirs. That's a whole other controversy that I'm not even going to get into. Now, it's about this time, late 2021 to early 2022, that the Spirit Halloween movie was announced, and it was actually released in October 2022. Now, obviously, it's not a high-budget movie. Don't expect any, captivating story or effects. But honestly, either way, it's still cool to see Spirit release a film, even if it's not very good. Now, for the sneak peek 2022 season, Spirit essentially did a clone of last year, and had a timer to a specific date. However, this time it wasn't really a surprise since we knew what Spirit was doing. Also around this time, Spirit Halloween released a bunch of podcasts, and one of them was called A Tale of University 6. Essentially, it makes a story with fictional characters in a real asylum. The reason why I bring this up is this kind of made me mad, as Spirit knew hunters would analyze this to its deepest core, and yet it really didn't reveal much info, and it wasn't vital at all to the season. The podcast was super long too, but however, I recommend checking out Aiden K's video, link will be in the description. Obviously, it's a speculation video for the 2022 season, so it's kind of outdated since it already happened, but he put so much effort into it that you should still give it a watch. Anyways, the countdown ended, but this time it was even later, being on July 20th, and it was named Experiment 1031, and it was also a hint for the lab theme. This teaser trailer was admittedly a pretty corny experience, and this was even worse than last year's. Only 5 props released: Bag of Bones, Lord Raven, Monty, Lucky Bombs, and Bog Zombie, and the rest of the props just had blurry, out-of-focus images. I think Spirit responded out to the backlash, that's just a couple of days later they released the rest of their lineup. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's not really that big of a deal, but this kind of situation just kind of makes me miss sneak peeks and just how much hype it was to get weekly or every other week prop releases. Also, I should mention that there's also a mini halfway to Halloween teaser. It didn't really reveal much. It just revealed a hint to a lab theme, Betty Sharp's knife, and the Flagship opening date. Anyways, speaking of Flagship, Flagship rolled around and it was bigger than ever. I mean, literally bigger than ever. Hunters like Tyler G and ecoops videos waited out of Flagship, not the morning of, but literal days before. More hunters started to join, and eventually the morning of, tents were lined up on the streets, and the line seemed to never end. Some people brought their classic Spirit props, and there's also like a Mountain Dew truck, a photo booth area, festivities, and games. However, I don't think Spirit expected this many people, as their stock kind of reflected that. Things were swiped off the shelves left and right literal minutes after opening, and I do hope Flagship 2023 is more stocked, as honestly it just kind of looked like a nightmare. I can't even imagine how crowded 2023 Flagship will be. Anyways, on to the actual store. These themes may be one of my new favorite themes, as they're just so detailed and have so many cool features. Unfortunately, literally none of the props fit in it, so that's nice. The front theme is the Reaper's Monster Laboratory. It's somewhat of a spiritual successor to the 2008 Chop Shop. It had super cool effects like this kill switch that activates animatronics, these like Tesla coil things. I don't really know what they're called, but there's bubble tubes, screens, and holograms. We also got a mini third theme that was actually a circus theme and it had Monty in it. And finally, the back theme, which is also amazing. It had props like Regan, Nozzles, and Mr. Dark returning. It also finally featured a walkthrough, which the 2020 and 2021 themes lacked. It even had a shaking floor. Like 2019, it had screens, which includes more spirit lore about how Dr. Illume, and online only for the 2021 season, made young Crouchy and Nightcrawler. Like 2019, this theme had a lot of Easter eggs to previous themes and props, like an Experiment 4 crate, who was a prop sold in 2021, a little nod to the SS Riptide, Haunted Hotel, and many others. I probably should have mentioned this back in 2021, but Spirit actually started to sell more prop merchandise, which is super cool. In 2021, they had blueprints of Cerberus, Crouchy, Mr. Howell, and Henry Hustle. And this year they had experiment posters with props like Nozzles, Buzzsaw, Miss Marie. They even had like dolls like around this time, like Uncle Charlie doll, Pumpkin Nester doll, all that cool stuff. Don't get me wrong, 2022 was an amazing season with lots of hype and cool themes, but the props were super underwhelming. We got Strawman, Monty, Lord Raven, Bog Zombie, and a few others that are cool, but most of the props just felt like Spirit knockoffs. Bag of Bones and Tombstone Terrier literally look like stuff like sold at CVS, and little Skelly Bones from 2015 made a return, except they removed his swing and made him a jump up prop. Not to mention young Crouchy, who may just be my least favorite spirit prop in store, as it's just such a lazy idea, and they got rid of the one thing that made Crouchy cool, his size, and young Crouchy was just a nightmare. It's just super cheap, and I did not like it at all. I am glad that, they released the Widow, who actually is one of the few modern creepy props that we have. But honestly, the season just felt like a fever dream, and it didn't even feel real. Now, that was the 2022 season, but we already have some insight to the 2023 Spirit Halloween year. Just recently, Spirit re-released Menacing Molly and also this Cotton Candy Corpse thing, and they also re-released the Fogging Gargoyle from about 2016, if I'm right. We actually got a noteworthy halfway to Halloween teaser, unlike last year's, and it teased not only the theme, but possible new props. So we probably are getting a graveyard theme this season, which is very exciting, and also Crypt Keeper making a return. The little photo back in 2021 was foreshadowing, I guess. And then on about June 15th, we got something that Spirit has never done before, where basically they gave us all the prop names and their descriptions. Well, technically not all of them, but a good majority of them, and they're kind of in the form of tombstones. I just think this was really interesting and, not really anything Spirit has ever done. And also on top of that, we got another flashback. We got Creepy Rising Doll along with Grave Watcher. And then Spirit even teased us with the new scene Scarecrow, leading us to believe that sneak peeks are back. But then like 2 laters on June 28th, Spirit officially released half their lineup. This does kind of make me sad because I thought the whole Tombstone idea was, gonna be like sneak peeks, like maybe like 2 every week or something. But no, it was just another batch release. There wasn't even any countdown or anything, leading this to be one of the most bizarre releases by Spirit. Apparently the day before they accidentally uploaded the video, and ever since they did that, it essentially went everywhere around the community. So just a day later, they made it officially public. And on top of that, it was literally near the end of June, not even in July yet. Quite an interesting decision on Spirit's marketing team. Now, at the time I'm recording this, Spirit still hasn't released all their props, but I still do believe that the 2023 season can shape up to be one of, if not the best year in Spirit's history. And here we are today. I didn't plan for this video to be so long, but here we are. Obviously, this is more centered on a Haunter and animatronic side of Spirit's history compared to their actual business side, but personally I think that makes this video more interesting. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to like, subscribe, share, and of course, goodbye everyone.